We know that breathing is part of what we pay attention to because it matters. And in fact, breathing is a fundamental leadership skill, of a leadership practice. Why? Because it reorients your embodiment. And so the practice is not just to breathe. Taking a deep breath is not about breathing. It's about shifting what some people would call your being, the way of being, your presence, your relationship to the situation, your relationship to yourself. Does this make sense? Hello?
Yes.
Anybody there? Okay. So those of you who have your camera off, I'd invite you to turn them on if you can, if it's appropriate, so that we can engage as a conversation and have this be something that will be interactive. We're going to do some exploration here today, and we're going to have a chance to do a couple of exercises too. One you can do solo, and another you'll have an opportunity to do a breakout if you're open to that. Some people get breakout crazy in these public webinars. It's like, no, not actually being with another person. And so you can have a choice. You can stay with us or engage in that exercise. And so welcome to the second session. This is a series of conversations around the core of leadership. And if you haven't had a chance to see the video for the first one, I'm going to invite you to do that. There's some background there that's relevant to enrich what we're going to do today, because this journey into leadership, this journey into the core, into ourselves, has layers. It has steps. And so in the last session, we focused on making the point that external action is determined by your internal states. Let me say that again. Your external action, and therefore your results in the world, depend upon your internal states, and not just for you, but for everyone. And it's not part of our cultural common sense. When we talk about action, we talk about, well, do this and get that result. It's always in the perspective of external action. And that's the blind spot. That's why I would claim, from my journey in this exploration for over 40 years, that leadership is challenging in our culture. I don't think we really know what it is. And one of the reasons is we try to understand it as skills that produce external results, and we've left out the interior of the experience that leads to that action. And when you leave out the interior of your experience, of other people's experience in the world of action, you've left out people. And this tends to degrade the world of action into a mechanical context. It's all about do this to get that, do this to get that. Do more, by the way. And don't complain. We don't have to deal with people. We just want the results. We tend to be trained to want life to be an ATM. As long as I have my card, give me what I want. Instead of, oh, I'm a human being interacting with other human beings. And if we can awaken to that, we will see leadership in a new light. We will see choices that we didn't see before. We'll have results that we didn't have before. That's our experience of this journey for over 40 years. What we are dealing with in the generative leadership learning journey is transformation of you. Trans means you move to a new form. That's what leadership is about. It's moving ourselves to a new form. It's about moving other people to a new form. It's about moving action to a new form, the future to a new form, the results to a new form, the world to a new form. But we can't do that if we're not skillful at that reforming journey. If what we're trying to do is understand and control and fit everything into what we already know, we've closed the door to transformation. We won't become anything except what we've already been. And leadership's about creating the future in the way that we hold it. And we use the term generative to highlight that human beings generate action, that generate results. But the fact we do so doesn't mean we do it well. It doesn't even mean that we know how we're doing it. You see, everybody's got a body, but because you have a body doesn't mean that you're prepared to be an Olympic athlete. There's more learning that's involved in being an Olympic athlete, getting to know your body, getting to know what it takes to get ready for the future challenge that you've chosen. And leadership is the same. So let me begin. I have some images to share with you. And my teammate Renika is going to give me.
Done, Bob.
Thank you, my dear. Okay, so here we go. We have a chance to begin this journey together. And before I dive into our journey into the core, and I want to be clear that when I talk about the journey into the core, I'm talking about your journey into your core. There's no core out there that we're going to go visit, right? We're talking about your core. What's your core as a human being? What's your core as a leader? Before I do that, I want to share announcements because our experience with these webinars is we get into very interesting conversations and we forget to share information. So let me just make an announcement to begin about upcoming events. The big one is that we'll be having our generative leadership workshop next October. And the reason that I want to announce it now is some people who are interested in doing a deep dive into this learning and intensive, that you want to get these dates into your calendar. So it's October 19, 20, 26, and 27. The learning content is the first 3 days. The fourth day is for people who are going to continue learning in our one-year tracks in coaching in organizations. The program's called Coaching Excellence in Organizations, and in our generative leadership program. So if that's of interest, put the note in your calendars and keep those dates open. And so last time we began to produce some context about being human. What is it to be human? Because the leadership journey is a learning journey, it's a life journey, but what's a life journey? It's the experience of human beings. And so, as I said, we need to put the human being back in the story of leadership, of action, of careers. We need to understand when we are living in a worldview or interpretations or practices that leave people out, because then people are taken advantage of. They're damaged. And one thing I'm going to explore with you today is sometimes you do that to yourself because we aren't oriented to what is my humanity and how do I do that well. So we talk about becoming a new observer to see the world with new eyes. This is not philosophical. This is not simply, this is super practical. If you want to be a chef, you have to have the ability to see the world of the chef. If you're going to be an accountant, you have to see the world of the accountant. If you're going to be a leader, you have to see the world of the leader. But what is the world of the leader is something that's not clear. When you go to the bookstore, you see hundreds of books on leadership. You don't see hundreds of different books on fundamental chemistry. Fundamental chemistry, you may have 2 or 3 birds because they know what it is, but leadership is still speculative. And so what you see, one of our principles, is that awareness creates choice. If you're not aware of something, it doesn't exist for you, and therefore you have no choice about it. Even though it can be part of your world and affecting you, if you're not aware, then you don't have choice about it. But if we can become a new observer, if we can bring new awareness to see the world of leadership, to see the world that leadership creates, which is a world of action where people create shared futures together and make them happen, then we have new choices for action to produce new results. And one of our keys learning in our over 40 years on this journey is that this interpretation that a new observer produces new action, new results, is very congenial for one of the other blind spots of our culture, which is that learning is about learning new stuff, new information, new concepts. And if I have these new concepts, then I can take new action for new results. At a shallow level, that'll get us by. But what we've learned is for this transformation journey, you have to become a new actor. You don't learn to play the piano by being a new observer of it. You have to have a body that can do it. You don't learn to play tennis by just being a new observer. And leadership is the same. We need to know the moves. Last week, we introduced the anatomy of action. And in the anatomy of action, we distinguished that action produces results, produces outcomes. That's part of our cultural common sense. But commitment is what shapes action. Your readiness to act, what action you are going to take, lives in your body right now. It's inside you. Commitment is something that's inside you. This is a point of confusion for many people because they think commitments are things that you've said externally or agreements you've made externally or contracts. Yes, they're commitments. But the commitment that matters is the commitment inside of you. Because if you don't experience that commitment inside of you, then it's not going to manifest in action. It's not outside of you, it's inside of you. And we also introduced the notion that we're actually going to go into more deeply next week, which is what is the world of conversations in which commitments are produced that shape action and results. But today, where I'm inviting you to, where I want to dive in with you, is into commitment itself. What is commitment? If it's part of all action, I guess it's part of all of us. But what is it? If we're not aware of it, then we don't have choices about it. It just is what it is. But if we want to learn skill at shaping commitments that shape action, not only for ourselves, but with others, oh my God, that's leadership. Then we need to unpack what commitment is. And my learning from over 40 years of working on these perspectives and practices and skills and helping leaders and coaches of leaders and people in life produce more valuable action is that we can't learn commitment as a concept. It's a full body experience. Does that make sense for our internal exploration here? So we're going to look at experiencing that. Care is another part of our internal territory. You see, if you don't care about an action, you're probably not going to do it or not going to do it well. If you don't care about a result, then the level of commitment you have is going to be less than if you cared. So care is a huge part of our internal ecology. So the actions you take and the results you get, what this diagram is saying, and it's what we explore in our programs, is that all your actions, all your results come from prior conversations, all of them, the good ones, the bad ones, the so-so ones, the conversations you have and the conversations you don't have, the conversations you do well and poorly, because they determine the commitment and the connection to care. You see, care determines whether your outcome is valuable or not. If you don't care about the outcome, it's not valuable. It determines whether it's satisfying or not. If you don't care about it, it's not satisfying. And it determines whether it's meaningful. And so our conversation last week was about really going into the core to get to know care. Do you know what you care about? Most people don't. Most people have lived a life of getting good at something to deal with the realities of life and perhaps getting successful at something. But many of them report, well, what's life all about? Where's the juice? Where's the good stuff? And it comes from your care. It's not out there. You're not going to have a good life because you get rich or famous or have power. You're going to have a good life if your internal ecology allows you to connect to value with satisfaction and meaning for you. And it's different for every person. How are we doing? But today I want to go and drill into commitment. Now, I'm doing something here in this series that may make some people impatient. It's like, what are the actions? Give me the tips and techniques. That's real popular out there these days. Oh, give me the 5 steps to success. And we have them. But what I'm trying to share with you in our 40 plus years of working with leaders and teams and organizations and coaches, dealing with leadership and teams and organizations and people learning how to live a good life, is that where we need to learn is not more tips and techniques of activities. We need to learn how to connect to ourselves, connect to our own heart, to our own soul. We need to be able to see whether other people are connected or disconnected, because we can be disconnected. I think the state of our culture today is disconnection. Disconnection from each other, disconnection from our own value, satisfaction, and meaning, and being lost in a story that I have to just become good at something and produce results out there. And so we're going to look at commitment as the internal state, and this will move us toward action. By next week, we're gonna show how this informs the action and results. But take a deep breath. I really want you to hear this. What I have to offer you from my 40 plus years, I'm in my 42nd year now on this learning journey, is that the big problem we have in the world, in organizations, in leadership, and the world in general, is people don't know how to look in. We need to go in first before we go out. That's when we touch with our humanity. That's when we are primed to be in touch with other people's humanity. And in the mechanical metaphor, the story might be, oh, Bob's just philosophical and woo-woo and soft and touchy-feely, and real action is like, it's the hard stuff to sacrifice. And no, the opposite is true. When you bring people's care and commitment and capacity to be aware of new choices, to have conversations of creation, you get better results. You get better results personally, you get better results as a team, you get better results as an organization, you get better results in the world. The argument against it is a perspective from the mechanical world. Let's just work with the technicalities. And so we found that we do want results in the world, but in order to produce big results in the world, we have to do it with other people. We can't do it alone. Thank you. That's a call from my wife. And in order to produce big results in the world, we have to do it with others. If you want to make a big impact in the world, you have to touch and enable others. This takes us to leadership. This takes us to teamwork. This takes us to relationship. But in order to be skillful in that we world, we have to deal with ourselves first. We have to do with me before we go to we in the world. So the learning journey we found in generative leadership, even for people that are very successful, own companies, world-class experts, that this journey of going into the core, into me, allows me to see new choices, possibilities for how I can move with others in the we and produce more value in the world. That's why we're doing this. And so it does something very profound. It means that becoming more human, living a good life, is totally consistent with being more competent, more powerful, and having a bigger impact in the world. They're not opposed. They're not disconnected. So let's see how that happens. So the perspective here is we have this inner aspect of our human experience, and we have the outer aspect of it, how that informs, and we showed with the anatomy of action, our inner states, care and commitment, affect what we choose, what we do, what we produce. And we have the other. We have to do it with others. So we're looking from this point of view, the inner, the outer, the other. And I'm emphasizing in these first webinars the inner aspect because it's our blind spot. It's where people haven't been trained. It's where we can build a foundation for a whole new powerful way to produce action in the world with others. And so what is commitment? Let me, I have several slides here that have some points I make. Some people learn auditorially, some visually. So I'm going to make some lists here, but I'm inviting you to an exploration again to this journey into your own core and expanding your awareness of what we share as human beings. So commitment is your relationship to the future now. It's not a thing. It's not a great, what you're committed to right now, as you're listening to me right now, what you're committed to is the shape of your future. What you're going to do after this webinar is part of that future. What your habits are about what you do in the evening is part of your future. What projects you have. So if we look from that point of view, the future lives inside of you. You see, the future isn't here yet. There is no future except your story of it, your experience of it. And the commitment you have is an orientation to what I'm going to do now and going forward in time. Commitment is that shape of that relationship, and it has a feeling to it. Think of something you're really committed to right now, whatever it is. What's your answer to that question? What are you really committed to? Notice how it feels. Notice the energy of it. Notice the mood of it. Notice how it shapes your readiness for action. Now, take a moment here and think of something you're absolutely not committed to, don't want to waste your time with, don't have any connection to, and see how that feels. It has a feeling too. The commitment, because it's about your future, it directs your attention. What are you going to pay attention to? What future action are you going to be prepared for? What outcome are you shaping yourself for? And so commitment is an action that's sometimes done explicitly, consciously, to say, I commit. I will do this. Say out loud right now. I don't need to hear you, but say out loud for yourself, so your body's in experience of it. Say, I will. Say it like you mean it. I will. You feel it? And you have the choice to put whatever you want after that. You have this internal power of I will, and you can choose what you're going to say after that. It's amazing. And you can also say, I won't. This is kind of the way that we carve the future, the yeses and the nos. And yet it's a challenge. Many people find it difficult to say yes and mean it. Many people find it difficult to say no. And so their future is always kind of, yeah, maybe, and well, I gotta, and And so we're looking to find our power that's there if we learn how to say, I will do this, I won't do that. And the challenge is a lot of our default answers to what I will and won't do have come from our past, and they weren't chosen. They're a habit. Good habit, bad habit, but it's a habit. Well, I don't choose. I mean, it's like just obvious what I'm going to do. Well, that gives us the opportunity to zoom out and look at our habits and begin choosing. So take a moment here. If you're taking notes, you may want to write down just an item or two and into these questions. Your commitments can show up as everyday routines. What are the everyday routines you're committed to? How do you get up in the morning? How do you do your meals? What do you do for entertainment? How do you work? What are your routines? Those are commitments, those are choices, and they can be habits, good or bad. What commitments do you have with others right now in your life? We're not talking concepts here. We're talking about what's real for you. I'm doing this to help us experience with awareness how commitment lives in our lives. I have commitments with others. I didn't turn my phone off and my wife was calling me. I have a commitment to have conversations with my wife. I'm going to call her back later. What are the projects you're committed to? What have you said you're going to do with your future? Isn't that incredible? Look at what power you have to say yes to a project or no to a project, creating a future. What are your commitments around your problems? How do you deal with your problems, your challenges, your issues? What are your habits there? Sometimes people aren't clear about what they're committed to, and that is the problem. What's the context story that you live in? I am I am committed to la, 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 la. I have a purpose of. What's your context? That includes the story about you. That includes your story about life. It includes your story about other people. It includes your story about action. And in generative leadership, we found that part of the learning journey is to zoom out far enough that we can begin to see the stories we live in and the commitments they have. And you're playing games. What's your game? What are the games you're committed to? Is it big or small? And I don't mean by big or small that it's good or bad or better or worse. I'm just saying what are the games you're playing? Are you playing the game of a good life or not? Are you playing the game of sacrifice? Maybe. Are you playing the game of contribution, of leadership, of taking care? So commitments are choices. And as I said, awareness creates choice. So part of what this journey is, and I'm taking it slow, I'm going to the internal experience of your commitment. Are you beginning to feel it? Are you finding your commitments inside you? And are you aware that they're choices? Where do you have a commitment saying, no, that's not a choice. That definitely not a choice. That's got to happen. And yet that's a choice. And one of the things we've learned about people and their commitments is they often believe they don't have choices. In our current culture, we live like, yeah, I got some choices and I got no choice. You know, there are places I don't have choice. Our interpretation is different. Our interpretation is you always have choice. Do you have choice about the weather? No. But do you have choice about your relationship with the weather? Always. Do you have choice about whether the sun comes up or not? No. But do you have a relationship with that? Yes, always. We're going to be born, we're going to live, and we're going to die. Do we have control over that? No. But do we have choices of what we do along the way? Absolutely. And so we want to remind ourselves, even when it doesn't feel that way, that we always have choice, including with our relationship with choice. If you say, I don't have choice, then you're making a choice about choice. It's actually a demonstration of choice. And so that has to do with some of the conversations we live in. So sensing and listening is how we become aware of our commitments. Listening to yourselves is where I've been trying to provoke you here. Listening to others. And there's a little exercise I want to invite you to. It's real simple, but it's very powerful. It's very revealing. And Natalie, you there? Where's my Natalie? Your camera's off. Okay. So Samriti, are you there?
Yes, Bob, I'm there. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to play this exercise a little bit. This is something we're going to invite you to do because even though I'm going to demonstrate it with Samriti, doing it is experiential rather than, it's like when you watch a sporting event, that's one experience, but if you're on the field playing, it's a different experience. So we're going to show you the exercise we're going to do because it's going to unpack a portal to a whole new worldview. So here's the game. It's fun. There's no worry here. Samrita and I are going to be partners, and you can do this with a partner as well. If you don't want to do a breakout, well, that's fine. You can stay and hang out with me. What the game is that we get to say 2 words and 2 words only. No other talking in the exercise. The words are I will. and there's an A and a B. I'll go first, and playing with Sam Reedy, my partner, and I'm going to say the words "I will," and it's going to be said in a certain way. Then she's going to say "I will." We're going to go back and forth. But here's the game: every time you say "I will," it has to mean something different than any time it's been spoken previously. So we look at all the different ways we can say "I will." We have to get at least 10 different ways of saying "I will." So Sam Reedy, I will. Your turn.
I will.
I will.
I will.
I will.
I will.
I will too.
I will.
I will. And so are you getting the point? Let's see here. So this is a simple but profound exercise. Why is it profound? Because it shows that the way you listen to the I wills, every one is different. A different future is showing up. Your experience of that declaration is different. The future that's going to show up is different. And the commitment is not in the words. We have to listen beyond the words. And this is when we begin to really see the world of leadership, of human beings creating the future together. So down in the reactions, at the bottom of your screen in Zoom is a reactions button. And if you, oh my God, I have very, so if you hit the, interesting, I'm playing here, I'm sorry. If you, yeah, there you go. Thank you for that. So if you want to avoid the breakout, leave your thumbs up, and and you can stay here with me. But I recommend you go and do the exercise and have fun doing the 10. And because the question after you do the 10, you stop and then you talk to your partner. What was it that made the difference? Because every statement was a different flavor of commitment. How did you understand that? And it wasn't the words. So let's do the exercise. It's real fast, it's real short, 6 minutes. We'll come back and we'll discuss what we discovered through the exercise. Let's rock and roll. Awesome. Hi, TENS, everyone. Welcome back. I'm always pleased when we have survivors from breakouts. That's really good that you made it through. But let's open up for the following question. What did you notice? What did you pay attention to that determined your listening of the commitment? Because it wasn't the words. The words were the same, but the commitment was different every time. What did you pay attention to? Anybody?
I think we paid attention to the tone and the expressions.
Very good. Okay.
Facial expressions.
Beautiful. Who else?
I've
Emotion.
paid attention to attention,
Uh-huh.
and the energy.
The energy. Yeah, good, good.
Yes.
Someone else? Oh, Morgan. Hi. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, you're on mute. There you
There
go.
you go. I'm not on mute anymore. I probably paid attention to the responsibility level. So there was very strong I will. So
Yeah.
it was a commitment that I was making. There's no question I would do it. It was more responsibility.
Very good. Very good. So let me share here something that we've discovered over the years with our I will. One is the point we were just discussing, that the inner commitment is not in the words. The inner commitment of the person that we're, and so what are we paying attention to? What we have learned over the years is a way of observing that we call yourself. Who are you? You're a self. What is a self? SELF in English is the word self. This SELPH is an acronym that allows us to be an observer of what's going on. It's one way to listen to commitment. S stands for somatics and body. Somatics is a word that means mind and body together, because depending on what you're thinking, your body will take on different orientations and postures. So if you're a leader and you're saying, I'm dealing with someone who's difficult, you're going to have a different sense in your body and a different approach than if you say this person's well connected in the conversation. E stands for emotions and moods. L stands for language, the stories and the actual language that we're using, and they're all connected. If you live in one story, you'll have a mood or emotion about it and a body orientation that's aligned with that. If you live in a different story, they'll change. Any one of the three, when it changes, will affect the other two. We call their relationship a coherence. And P stands for practice. Practice is what we do biologically, what we do physically, that is what develops our skill. When you practice playing the piano, you get better at it if you have good practices. You can also practice to play it really badly. Tom could tell us about practicing from his experience over a lifetime with music. He's a master in that domain. And so the SEL that we are, the way we see the world, the way we act in the world, the way we feel about it, the way we show up with our presence, what stories we have, what commitments are expressed through those stories, have to do with the practices of our history. We have spent a lifetime becoming us. We have practiced being the way we are. We are the product of our history of practices. But because we have developed ourselves in these dimensions of SEL, we can shift them through changing our practices. See, learning in leadership or any performance art is transforming our body, transforming our emotions, transforming our language and stories to produce new possibilities, new actions, new commitment. And so this is a way that we begin to understand listening. We can step back and look at what's going on. And just as you learned with the I will exercise, you paid attention to the facial expression, body. You paid attention to the tone, emotions. You paid attention to the energy, somatics, and the story that was provoked in your own body. And so we could call this full body listening. Some people would call this being. What are you being? Well, it's the SELPH you're showing up with right now. That's what you're being. And so if we go back to the anatomy of action, we said that commitments are created in conversations. And this takes us to a field that many of you have probably been introduced to. It's becoming more widely known. Is that an element in language that leads to commitment was developed originally in the 1940s by a professor at Oxford University called John Austin. It was refined by another professor at University of California, Berkeley, John Searle, who was a teacher of my master teacher, Dr. Fernando Flores. and speech acts is that commitments are made in conversation. And what we have learned over the years is that it doesn't matter what you say, it matters what's listened. If you're trying to say I will to someone in a way they believe you and they feel that you are really committed, you can say it any way you want, but what they listen is what they listen. Sometimes it will make sense that they listen the way you do and you got across, but sometimes you'll think you're saying one thing and they're listening something else. So what we found is the key skills in leadership, in coordinating action, is not what you say, it's listening to how other people are listening to you. Listening to the listening, which means we begin to have a sense of what's going on for them internally, what's their care, what's their commitment, what's their orientation to the future that may or may not be consistent with the words that are being used. It's a full body listening. And when we do that, we have the opportunity to produce shared commitment or not. And that leads us to creating shared futures. It leads us to the conversations of leadership, teamwork, coordination, producing results. And so let me open up for any comments or questions that I've provoked here. These 1 hour fast food drive-bys allow us to just take one bite out of the bigger world of action and leadership. But let me open up if someone has a comment or question that's been provoked by today, by our exploration of going to the interior, of experiencing commitment as something that's in you and in others. And we're going to leave it hanging for next week because we have a third session of how does that produce shared commitments, which moves us to what we call the we space that I introduced to you earlier. Anybody have a comment, question? And this is the moment of listening where I get to make up my story about what's going on with you. Like I was either brilliant or I really blew it here. So I'm not sure what how it landed for you.
No, you were brilliant. This is Tom. As usual, very, very thought provoking, and I love the way you tie a lot together. I will own that I have mastered a wind instrument, and I'd like to share with you that when I first started taking lessons on that wind instrument, my breathing was so horrible that I would be excited and I'd breathe and I'd try to play and I'd breathe and I'd try to play, and then I would pass out. And
Wow.
My clarinet teacher, wonderful lady, would grab the clarinet and let me fall on the floor because she was saving my parents from repair costs. So through guided expert lessons and new practices, anyone can learn how to breathe.
There you go. Beautiful.
That's my comment, right back to where you started with the breath. It's so amazing to work with people when there is an attunement to breath. I can actually feel in my body when they start to get tight or when they start to expand.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for that, Tom. Yeah. And our breath is so much a part of our presence. When we're triggered, when we're afraid, when there's a crisis, one of the natural reactions that people have with their bodies is to tighten up. In fact, when there's that triggering moment, as we find when you're in an observer of that and in coaching conversations or in supporting leaders, they often stop breathing. They often hold their breath. So if there's a breakdown, what do you do? What do you do with that moment? And one of the fundamental practices, going back to the breath, is to notice tension in the body, take a deep breath, relax on the exhale, because it brings you present. We're not doing breathing just to be better. Of course, we have to breathe. The body will insist on it shortly enough. But the manner in which we breathe is like telling other people around us, this is how I am with this situation. If I'm uptight, if I'm afraid, or if I can be present in the moment, even though there's a challenging moment going on, that's a leadership skill. It's also a life skill. And one of the reasons our programs that we invite people to are a year long is so that you have a chance to practice. You get personal coaching. And these are practices we work on, not as a performance in a moment, but as something that you're building as new habits. And it makes a difference. So we've come to the end of our scheduled times. I hope this was relevant for you, valuable for you. I'll say again, we're going to be having our intensive workshop of these skills coming in this coming October. That will be the 18th, 19th, if I have it right, the 26th and 27th. And no, I had it wrong. 19, 20, 26, 27. And let me just show that. And just so you have it available for your thinking. And, oh, well, anyway, the computer won, as I tried to bring up the visual. But last week we talked about care. Are you connected to your care? If you're not connected to your care, you're probably having challenges in the experience of value, satisfaction, and meaning. Today was about, are you connected to commitment? But the internal experience of it, not simply the concept of it. And we're going to go toward conversation and external action and show how all of this lines up. Remember the anatomy of action? The reason it's there, it's a structure of reality that will serve you. I recommend it as you travel in life, as you travel as a leader, to use that diagram to say, if I'm not getting the outcome I want, what's needs to shift in terms of commitments? What needs to shift in terms of conversation? And conversations are not words, they're full body experiences, SELPH. That's what we've learned in our journey of over 4 decades. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for being committed to exploring leadership and being willing to take this step to become aware that we need to go in before we go out if we're going to find our choice. Otherwise, it's automatic. And invite you to that practice with these questions. What do I care about? What am I committed to? What am I going to choose? And in the social domain, what's the next conversation? Because that's going to create the future. Simple, not trivial. Deep skills. Just like learning how to put a finger on a piano and make a sound is easy. Learning how to play a symphony, a concerto, something beautiful is another level. And that's what we do in conversation. You're already doing it. At the level you're doing it, the invitation is, are you ready to take it to the next level of relevance, power, meaning, and beauty? So thank you all very much. Appreciate your attendance today. Hope to see you next
Thank you
week.
all.